It's time for a prediction video as we are approaching 2025, and in this video we're going to talk about Bitcoin alone. Are we going to peak next year, or are we going to have a super cycle, or is the market over? Everything within this video. Let's get started. Let's first discuss 2024, as 2024 has been a very boring year, right? Nah, 2024 has been a crazy year if you're a Bitcoin investor, because it's the year where we finally were getting validation of what Bitcoin might become or already is. And we have seen people on television, or actually very many skepticism, turning into positivity after some events took place. So let's first discuss 2024, in which 2024 was the year where Bitcoin has rallied, as you can see, from 42k to 100k plus during this year. And we basically came from the 30k areas just around October of 2023, where the rumors of a approval or validation of the ETF were likely going to happen. And the first 2 weeks of 2024, we've seen the ETF being approved, after which we've seen more than 30 billion of inflow in the markets, which is super positive for Bitcoin, which is super positive in making Bitcoin a more adult asset, in the sense that that even exceeded in the years throughout the year, in which we've seen a run towards 70k in March of 2024, basically through the inflow of Bitcoin. Then we had a period of 6 months stagnation, I would say. And then Donald Trump came around. He basically made the next impulse happen on Bitcoin, where we started at $70,000 and we broke all the way towards 108k, maybe even higher, through that actual period as he won the elections. And as he won the elections, he is going to start off a lot of things. But Bitcoin is also being discussed more broadly, in the sense that older investors or older participants are also seeing, hey, well, if the US is going to step into Bitcoin, maybe I need to do that too. So Trump is going to look to get Bitcoin as a strategic reserve on the balance sheet of the Fed or within the US. And because that is an option, the entire adoption starts to grow, where Brazil and more countries are looking to also add Bitcoin as a strategic reserve to the balance sheet. And also corporates, in line with MicroStrategy, are investigating to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet, as Amazon is one of them, and more bigger companies are looking into it. On the other hand, we have been seeing a pretty rough year. So we had a super positive year surrounding Bitcoin, but on the macroeconomic side, we've had a relatively rough year where not as many rate cuts have been happening as we were expecting to see happening. I think a lot of people were still focused on 2020, 2021, expecting to see a significant downfall on the yields. And as you can see with the chart, the yields are still very high. Some of them are the highest in the year. And that is putting on hold on the strength of the move of Bitcoin. I think that if the rates are going to go lower, Bitcoin would be running more, crypto would be running more. So it's not really the most favorable climate at this point for the markets. And we've had a very rough correction taking place in the beginning of this year, in April, when we had the unfolding of the war in Israel, where Iran attacked Israel as a response. That caused a significant correction across the markets. But also in August, we've seen a substantial crash taking place, especially on the altcoins, with the Japanese yen carry trade being unfolded, where basically one rate hike on a Japanese bank caused the markets to collapse. But all in all, we've seen that the US dollar and the yields keep on adding strength. And as long as that is taking place, then there is no actual reason for Bitcoin to continue showing strength. So it's a great year, but it could have been stronger, especially on the macroeconomic part. So going into the next year, the expectations are super positive. and the likelihood of Bitcoin going to run substantially are there. While on the other hand, we've got bear market PTSD people saying that Bitcoin has already peaked. So there are a lot of different groups taking place. Now, let's discuss what my expectations are going to be for 2025. Let's analyze the markets for 2025. What are the expectations? Are we going to be peaking at the end of 2025 with Bitcoin going to 250K or whatever it is? Before we're going to do that, I wanted to use a few important charts or images to show the current market environment and what my expectations actually are going to be. The first thing is market psychology, and you can see that in this case, it is just a great example of how markets behave. In 2013, a line of people were interested to buy Bitcoin at $1,000. They were not interested to buy Bitcoin at $200. In 2018, people were interested to buy Bitcoin at 20K during the actual peak, but they were not interested into buying Bitcoin at 85% lower a year later. And the same can be said about 2021, 2022, where Bitcoin was rallying towards $69,000, and a year later it was at 15 to 20K, and simply people were not interested again because everything was negative surrounding them. And now it's the exact same example. Bitcoin was 40K at the beginning of the year, and for us it was very hard to get clients into the consultancy, but it's also not really buzzing with the friends around us. Well, now we are going into a 100K plus territory, Trump validating Bitcoin, and all of a sudden everybody wants to get into Bitcoin again, and the expectations are going through the roof. While most of the actual chunk in terms of ROI you could have been making within the cycle from an investor perspective is already made. So you're actually stepping in at a later point in time. Well, if you use this market psychology, then most of the altcoins are actually where nobody is standing in line. So most of the altcoins are still super interesting to add to your portfolio. So I wanted to share this with you. And the second thing that I wanted to share to you is the rainbow chart. And I don't know if the rainbow chart is actually valid. It's a logarithmic scale price chart on Bitcoin that basically tells where something is undervalued and where something is overvalued. So in this case, if you're looking at the blue colors, that is when Bitcoin is undervalued. Green, actually, it's the same. And when you're looking at the red and orange colors, that is when something becomes really expensive. And in this case, we are currently at a stage, we are a little bit further in this line already, but we are currently at a stage where we are at yellow, green to yellow, because the rainbow chart continues to expand over time. And the further it expands, the higher the extreme prices go. So what you can see here is that every cycle we get an expansion into extreme, actually slightly higher. In 2021 we got into extreme as well. And in 2017 we got to extreme. In 2021 we've not been into extreme territory. And what that should mean is that we should have been going towards 100K in the previous cycle. Now we're currently at 100K, but it's likely that this cycle is going to exceed the previous one significantly. And the longer it takes, the higher the price usually is going to go. But also, the higher the valuation goes, the more money is required to actually move the market. So the more time it will take before you get towards the peak of the actual cycle. So I think that the previous cycle should have gone higher. And it's also expected that this cycle is going to go way higher due to the fact that I expect the markets to take longer than the previous cycle. And this is the third and interesting chart, which is the bull and bear market cycle indicator, where you can clearly see that we're not in a bear market. The bear markets are the ones when the most like sell-offs are taking place. So when you can see the blue and the green colors taking place, that is where bear and extreme bear are happening. Green is where the first or early bull takes place, and red is where we see overheated bull. Not in this entire cycle we have seen overheated at all, but we do see that we have been into a Bitcoin bull since the beginning of 2023, and we are in the midst of that cycle, but we can continue to have that until we have the overheated bull taking place. that is where you are likely going to see that the expansion and the discussion surrounding Bitcoin continues to do so. And in 2021, we have not seen any overheated bull at all in the second run, which also shows that there's still more upside to be made. Now, as you can see here, the primary indicator for Bitcoin is to look at the money supply. And the US money supply hasn't broken the previous high in 2021. It is getting close to it. And then once it starts to break through it, that's where the actual run starts to take place. The US money supply has been going sideways for 2 years, and that is an impact on the crypto markets. Altcoins are very comparable in terms of price action to the money supply. If you look at the global money supply, it's expected to see an increase in that for 2025 by 18%. And if that expands by 18%, it is likely that we're going to see a substantial bull market taking place, where Cointelegraph predicts 132K for Bitcoin to be hit in 2025. But it's likely going to be significantly higher, as you can see that the previous increase from 80 trillion towards 100 trillion has caused Bitcoin to go from 3K to 70K. So this injection is the actual trigger for the markets and can continue until 2026 or 2027. But something to take in mind is that if Bitcoin is going to do what Raul says with his chart, where he says that the liquidity index is going to go down substantially in the first months of 2025, this thesis is aligned with the fact that we're currently overvaluing Trump being elected and Trump getting into the White House, where it's expected to have a positive impact on the strategic reserve, on all the things that he wants to do with crypto. I think he will have the positive impact, but I think it will take some more time. So having such a correction, as Raul was saying, is also in line with that thesis. And if we have a correction of like 25 to 30% in the first quarter, and we are mimicking what we've seen in 2024, where after that we're basically going sideways for 6 months, the thesis where we're going to get a longer cycle is definitely there. Maybe we are currently at 1998 of the dot-com bubble, where we are starting to build up, and that the cycles start to expand because there's more money involved, there are more participants involved. But all in all, in that light, I think that 2025 as a Bitcoin prediction, you need to take it a little bit broader, in which I think that 2021 should have gone way higher. I think that the current market might go to 10 to 15 trillion, maybe higher than that. And if you say 10 or 15 trillion, and you expect that the Bitcoin dominance is going to drop to 40%, that in that ballpark, a valuation of 200 to 300K for Bitcoin for next year is something that we could be looking at as a potential target or prediction, where we can also see that more governments, more corporates, and more institutional investors are going to allocate Bitcoin into their portfolios, as we are likely going to see a recession or weaker labor markets or rate cuts taking place, which is fueling the entire crypto industry. Thank you very much for watching to this update. Upcoming week, it's going to be Christmas, so enjoy your time with your family. We are going to be uploading a few new videos. We have an altcoin video, we have my predictions for the altcoin markets, and we've got a new podcast which is going to go live on Wednesday. Enjoy the holidays, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you again. Ciao!